Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Version Luna 3's live stream just wrapped up, well, I guess a few hours ago, but you know, I gotta wake up at a normal time. And with that, we have a ton of insane, actually great changes coming to Genshin Impact. And it's actually been a while since I've been this excited for a Genshin Impact patch. Okay, not that long, I guess. I was pretty excited for 6.0 as well. But this one has a lot of crazy things going on, which sets up an incredible precedence for Genshin Impact moving forward. Now, Genshin, I'm sure all of us know, has been very, very stubborn when it comes to buffing older characters, especially just kind of like broad generalized buffs that don't include polling for a new character because, well, you know, if they just buff characters, that's not going to help their sales. However, Genshin Impact has finally bucked that trend after 5 long years. Do you enjoy wasting monies on Primo Gems like I do? Well, I waste money at a 10 to 25% discount thanks to today's sponsor, Lootbar.gg. By just purchasing this $100 Genesis Crystals pack, I saved up to 25% off constellations that I may never activate, like my Arlecchino constellations. And why stop there? If you play any other gacha games like Honkai Star Rail, Zenless Zone Zero, and Wuthering Waves, Lootbar.gg lets you save big on all of these big titles. And heck, there are a ton of other titles as well, which I'm just learning about now, and I guess I'll have to use Lootbar for from now on. Sporting a 4.9 star rating on Trustpilot, and having personally used Lootbar many times now, saving money on both daddies on these banners has never been easier. Just select the package you want, input your Genshin user ID, swipe that credit card, and bam! In very little time, you'll get your Genesis Crystals. New users get a 10% off coupon, and returning users have a high chance of getting a 5% off coupon by smashing that link down below. And be sure to grab the $2 Welkin Moon coupon. Huge thanks to Lootbar for sponsoring today's video. Now, they're just buffing a ton of different characters. Not only that, but we are also getting some pretty solid reruns as well as Durin's release, and I'll be briefly talking about each of these things as well as some other stuff from the Luna 3 livestream. Now, the first thing that I noticed is that some characters were featured in the trailer, including Varka, Nicole, and Alice. And y'all, I gotta be honest.
Job is to leave her with some happy memories.
So I'm not sure how I feel about Varka's southern twang here. We have Nicole, who I think she looks absolutely fantastic. And as for Alice, I mean, her design is just out of this world. I mean, magical hat, magical hair accessories. It's crazy. It's like, but she definitely looks like a biggest Omega Klee. So maybe those Klee is a clone or a creation of Alice theories is becoming more and more true by the day, but we're gonna have to see. And at 3330, this one's really interesting. They kind of showed this Fiatenna girl, and she looks like she might actually have a design that's you know, a banner character worthy design. Here are also the coupon codes on screen for you guys. Make sure to grab those for some free Primo Gems. So before we talk about Durin as well as the other characters' reruns, let's quickly talk about the Hexarray buffs. And these buffs, you know, frankly change everything about Genshin Impact.
This changes everything.
Basically, after completing some quests, it looks like as long as you have 2 Hexarray characters in your party, those characters will receive some specific buffs to their kit. And the buffed characters being Venti, Klee, Albedo, Mona, Fischl, Razor, and Sucrose. So 7 characters here are getting buffed. And what we can see from these buffs is that they could actually be pretty substantial. And for example, if we take a look at Klee, it looks like Klee's basic 3 or something fires off a charged attack if you have a spark or whatever. So that looks like a pretty major improvement. Then we also have, for example, Albedo, who appears to be it appears that they're fixing his construct issues by spawning these whatever additional flower things. And now they even mentioned that Fischl of all characters getting a buff. Howeverse definitely has their favorite childs, and Fischl getting buffs even though she didn't really need them, but we're not going to complain because, you know, Fischl being a very free-to-play friendly character appears to be providing buffs to the team if it's overloaded or electro/lunar charged buffs. And then we have Razor buffs of all things, so maybe if you need an electro main DPS character, who knows if Razor is going to be capable of stepping up to the plate. Funnily enough, they didn't even mention Sucrose here, And I find this funny because Hoyoverse has been bullying Sucrose from like basically day one of Genshin Impact, and they have not stopped. Then we have Mona, who appears to be unmentioned as well, which I also find interesting. Then they also mentioned that some of these characters' constellations might also get buffed, so it's likely we're going to be looking at some major buffs outside of just these ones that have been listed so far. And personally, I'm super excited for this. And the reason why I'm super excited for this, not only I like a lot of these characters and it's fantastic to be able to use them again, but this sets a precedent for the future that Hoyoverse is going to actually buff older characters and give them a purpose, even with like some team building restrictions. I mean, I'd love to see, some of the Lee Yue cast eventually get buffed, some of the Inazuma cast eventually get buffed, and then God forbid if in the future we ever get to some of the Natling cast getting buffed. Slow down there, okay? Slow down there. Let's not party too hard here. Okay, so this brings us to talking about the actual characters. First, let's talk about Durin a bit. Durin is also a Hexarray character, and I'm assuming that he's going to work quite well with the other Hexarray characters that were buffed. So if you do want to, for example, utilize some of those other Hexarray characters to their fullest potential, well, perhaps Durin might be a good pickup for you. Basically, what Durin appears to do is that he appears to apply Pyro off-field, basically competing with Pyro Traveler, Xiangling, and Mavuika, and he appears to also be quite flexible as well. They mentioned, him being able to shred various elements resistances along with Pyro resistance, and alternatively, it appears in Vaporize and Melt, he's able to just boost his own Vaporize and Melt damage. Now, it's also very likely that there will be more Hexarray characters being released in the future. For example, potentially Varka, potentially Alice, potentially Nicole. Who knows? These characters could all be part of the Hexarray faction. However, I think that, pulling specifically for that is a bit iffy, but at the same time, that's up to you to decide whether or not that's something you want to go forward with. If those are the characters that you're really preparing for in advance in the future. Of course, we never know what Hoyoverse will do with this stuff. They tend to throw curveballs at us. Either way, though, Durin is going to be a new Pyro character, and newer lately always means better typically. So yeah, let's just put it that way. They're also buffing Venti and rerunning him at the same time. And this is literally the first of its kind. Venti here also being the very first banner. This is quite the callback, quite the throwback. They even did a goofy little mini tutorial on his kit. First, it appears that they lowered his burst or put his burst in a slightly better location. You can see that the hilichurls look closer to the ground. So this means that his shorty-like child might be able to hit them now instead of, I remember back in the day, child was just like swinging up into the air and he couldn't actually hit them. Like, I would have to like put a Zhongli pillar, hop onto it, and then have child smack him on the Zhongli pillar. Like, man, we're talking like Genshin Boomer days. However, what they also mentioned here was that if an active character triggers Swirl, including Venti himself, or perhaps even characters like Xiao and Wanderer, then their damage actually gets increased. So now I guess he buffs Animo DPS characters, which is, frankly, kind of crazy. And on top of that, we also have DPS Infusion Venti. So what the heck has my Genshin Impact become? Frankly, I have no idea, but this is really weird and I'm all here for it. Then they also announced likely a DPS Venti bow, although they didn't specify that. Why the heck else would Venti be using this bow while demonstrating his DPS capabilities and releasing this bow? This also sets the precedent of potentially releasing even more basically like new role for old character weapons. Like if they buff a character and they have a different role, their previous signature weapons don't work that well. Hey, let's make more money and release the bow too. So, are we going to see something besides the Vortex Vanquisher be ran with Zhongli? I sure as heck hope so, because yeah, I don't think anyone wants to see the Vortex Vanquisher anymore. But this also means, where's the Elegy? But yeah, I'm curious about the Elegy for the end, because of course that bow is still one of the best bows in the game. Anyway, in the first half, we also have Jahoda, and this is actually great for multiple reasons, and may not necessarily tie into like, oh, how insane Jahoda is. Like, they didn't even mention if she provides any buffs at all. They just mentioned that she's Animo and that she heals, and she applies some element from off field if she infuses her elements. And that's not really the important part. They also didn't mention if she's a moon sign character or not, but considering like she's literally like from Nod Cry, and she's in cahoots with Nefer and stuff, I'd wager my hat, even though I'm not wearing one, I'd eat it, that she's a moon sign character. And what this means is that if you've been lacking on a second moon sign character and have been struggling, like let's say you skipped Flynn's, you skipped Anefa, you skipped Lalma, you skipped Nefer, getting one copy of Jahoda or saving up for, Columbina is probably honestly a better idea to fulfill your moon sign ascendant gleam needs. But Jahoda is a decent additional reward for pulling on Durin, in the sense that you now actually potentially get another moon sign character. For those of you guys that skipped all the previous moon sign characters, you finally have another option to potentially help you deal with those super annoying wild hunt enemies that, well, let's be real, completely shill Ascendant Gleam moon sign. So yeah, we'll have to see how functional Jahoda is in, for example, Flynn's teams or in Nefer teams, or without either Flynn's or Nefer. But until then, well, stay tuned. Now, next we also have Verissa. I don't actually have too much to say about her, but Verissa is just one of the better DPS characters in the game, dealing a ton of raw damage output, and she's pretty solid at all levels of investment, whether it's free to play or whether it's whale levels of investment. But do keep in mind that as we move forward, barring like occasional fights for the patch, DPS focused older characters, they will have a couple moments to shine, but it's likely that, like with Arlecchino's rerun, right, we might get a patch that we shill her. But I feel the same way about, for example, Verissa or DPS Venti, in that you have a very temporary amount of shilling. And Verissa, all she does is DPS, but she does do a lot of it, so, hard to go wrong with her. And then we have Shilinin, and Shilinin I find also very interesting, because Shilinin is a universal support character who actually kind of feels like she's going through her Kazuha arc already, as Genshin Impact kind of speeds up having this roster, the ever-growing roster. Shilinin might be relegated to a few teams where she's absolutely excellent / best for, but eventually just kind of be slowly pushed out to become a bit more niche and no longer the best in slot for a lot of various teams. However, at the moment, of course, she's still best in slot for Mavuika, in my opinion. I know a lot of people say, oh, Yansan's better or whatever. Like, considering Shilinin has no energy issues, she's able to slap on Favonius to help support her team, and she even has some pretty decent sword options. Her having that complete lack of energy issue, she doesn't have to wait to catch any particles, which means that she has incredible ramp up time as well as energy independence for Stygian Onslaught. And of course, Stygian Onslaught is the main difficult endgame mode in Genshin Impact right now. So yeah, Shilinin is still fantastic for Petch teams plus Geo teams. Now, what else is coming in Genshin Impact Luna 3? We've also got a new 4-star weapon bow, and then we also have some new outfits for Millie Astro Wonderland. Personally, I like the previous witch ones more, but these are okay, I guess. And what's really interesting about Millie Astro Wonderland is that they're actually going to be somehow giving out 10 pulls worth of premium currency. And perhaps they got a bit of feedback in the way that they handled the premium currency pulls versus the kind of standard banner pulls for Millie Astro Wonderland costumes. Glad to hear that. Personally, I think they should give out plenty of the banner pulls, especially if you play the actual gameplay mode to reward you for, well, playing the gameplay mode. That about covers it for version Luna 3. Personally, I'm really excited for this patch. I love it that they're buffing older characters, and hopefully they'll become much more viable than they used to be. Huge thanks to Lootbar for sponsoring today's video, and you can even get a bonus $2 Welkin Moon coupon as well, so check them out down in the description below. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Want to Lose, signing out.